Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Tommy, we took a little break there past week, but we're back again.
Just didn't get to it, everything else going on.
And I turned 40.
Vacation, turned 40, vacation.
We need to celebrate that.
It just didn't happen. We had this idea ready to go. We just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Then I panicked about turning 40.
It happens.
And then and then we kind of put it to the side, and here we are again. But anyway, all right, Tom. So what do we got today?
Well, today we're going to be looking at a topic that there's always in the news. You always see them. People always wonder how people get sucked into these things. So we're looking at basically cults today. Some of these more infamous cults that came up, particularly in America, but I guess we can talk about some other ones too here and there. Any one of these cults can be a podcast. I'm sure our podcast just on cults, right?
Yeah, probably podcast, like multi-episode about just
multi-episodes just on one of these that we're talking about. Again, that's not what we do here. It's kind of just like a quick draw on a bunch of them. But yes, we'll be looking at some of these cults, like why people get sucked into them, what these cults did. Some of them are still going on today, like they still exist. Some have famous members. Some are you probably heard of. Some you might not have heard of, but they're all actually took place, and they all make you just scratch your head a little bit.
Right, like just doing this research, I think I'm gonna use the term cult a little less loosely. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm always like, oh my god, you guys are such a cult. Like, stop it. But like now that I've done some research about this, I'm like, I'm not gonna use that term anymore. Like, I'm gonna reserve that because this is pretty intense stuff. And I mean, I guess the first thing we could kind of get out of the way is, why do people join cults, right? So like I started. That's what kind of got me doing this research. I mean, I looked at the cults, and then I was like, all right, why would someone want to join this? So then I started doing research in that, and having taught sociology before, and you've taught sociology as well. I mean, we do a whole unit on cults. So I kind of went back to my own notes, like what would make someone do this? And there's a few common threads that draw people towards these towards cults, period. But the main three are one is they want to better themselves, right? It's either professionally or personally. There's this certain need or desire to better oneself. And a lot of these cults typically market themselves as organization that promotes self-betterment in some way, shape, or form. It's going to promise you enlightenment and make your
you're going to get what you're missing in life, basically. That's
exactly.
Trying to portray them.
Yep. And the second reason why a lot of people join cults is because they want a greater sense of community. So it's almost like you feel like you don't belong to anything. You want close relationships. Like you need that human need to belong to something. And, a lot of times when people have a lot of friends and have a really good, I guess, social life, a lot of times they don't actually join cults. It's more the person that struggles with making friends. And this kind of makes them a member of something, makes them, feel like they belong. And the last one that sociologists believe, or last reason for people to join cults, is usually that they join them in a state of extreme vulnerability. Things are just not going well in their life, right? Personal life goals are just not working. The timing plays a role. It's almost the idea, like usually people that try to get out of cults, because there are psychologists that actually like help people leave cults. And they say usually what it comes down to is these people say that like I was just at a bad place in my life, like things were not going well for me, and maybe like a death of a loved one or a career blunder or change, anything along those lines. And so these are the main three reasons why people join cults. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about
just a couple of them, and how they
a few cults, I guess,
pulled some people in, and then again some of them survived and some didn't.
Well, which one do you want to get started? I mean, we're not going to go in any particular order. This is not chronological in any way, shape, or form. I mean, as you know, for those of you guys that listen to our podcast, Tom and I do our research separately. We don't talk about this until we click record. So this is actually the first time we're having this conversation. But Tom, you want to get us going on one?
Well, yeah, I guess the one that people think about, right, when they think about, there's so many, but the one that they hear about a lot, the one that's like out there and everything would probably be the People's Temple, right? That's probably like the one famous. Well, they're all famous. Infamous, I guess you would say. The People's Temple, infamous, which actually lasted from 55 to 78. So they were around quite a bit. And this is the one I'm sure you people have heard of whenever you hear this saying like "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." Like
Yep.
that's actually a saying in like language, right? They're talking about because of what happened in 1978 with the People's Temple. It was basically founded by Jim Jones, right, in
Hmm.
Indiana in 1955, and it was really like a progressive organization at first. They were saying, we need civil rights. Let's have homes to protect mentally ill people and elderly people. It was the idea of they're going to create this perfect utopian society, and things change, and that's how they get a lot of people to join up real fast.
Hmm.
Is having this purposeful utopian society. And in '65, he moved them to Redwood Valley in California because he believed this would be a great place to survive a nuclear war. Because
Yep.
you see a lot of these during the 50s and 60s. That's their main thing. Like, we're going to survive a nuclear war. We're the peaceful ones. So if you want to be peaceful, you're against nuclear weapons, you want to survive the coming nuclear war, this is what you do. And they always have their leader that's very charismatic, which is what Jim Jones basically was, right, Pete?
Yeah. And most of them are. I mean, the
Yeah,
one
they
thing
have to be
I
at
don't
some
know if
level.
you like when you start reading this, he was pretending to do these like fake healings on
Yeah.
people
Hmm.
in the 50s, right? And what he would do is he would plant these people in the audience and he would like heal them in front of everyone and they would go through these convulsions. And then what would happen is they would like spit out like chicken livers out of their mouths that they had in their mouth, and it was like they were spitting out like the
The
evil
the
and or some sickness
the
out of their
the
body, and blood
sickness,
just
yeah.
came out. And then people were like, "Oh my gosh, like look, that's an organ that they just got out. Like he got it out of them, but like it obviously wasn't. It was like chicken liver." And but then
Yeah,
things don't work out for him, right? In the Redwood Valley in
well,
California.
no,
So
because there's a lot of media scrutiny, right?
yep,
And it's a lot of like, and it's also not as easy to set up this agricultural commune that he wants there. You understand, like these things work on a very small level, but as it gets bigger, yeah, then they're not going to work. So then I believe in '78 they moved
Guyana.
Jonestown to Guyana, and he
Yep,
had around 900 people at this time. And this is where they're going to be, and everything's perfect here. But then a couple disillusioned people started tipping off the American media that listen, this is still not safe. They actually have a lot of guns in there. They're
yep,
doing rehearsals of how to kill people. And at this time, Jim Jones is also getting, if you have this bunch of documentaries on it, you can see interviews and stuff. He seems definitely unhinged at the stuff from like
yep,
75 on, much more. Family members of people in this cult write to their congressman. So in 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan actually travels to Jonestown along with three journalists and a defector. They all go there, and everything seems fine there. Jim Jones kind of invites him in as kind of like, look, see, everything's fine. There's no issues here. But while Leo Ryan is there, apparently a bunch of people start passing notes to him saying, "We want to get out. We want to leave. We don't know how to leave. Can you help
yep,
us leave?" So he says he's going to take these people with him. And as they're leaving, they are shot and killed. The journalist and a congressman, a U.S. congressman, is shot and killed by Jones's men. So
yep.
Jones, no, this is it. Like once this congressman doesn't report back, the FBI is going to come here. Like they're going to send, the U.S. Army or whatever. That's what he's telling his people. He
And
ordered
that's
his
when he goes
followers.
into the whole like, all right, let's go back and
This is it.
drink this beverage.
Yeah, the cyanide laced drinks. Apparently, they weren't even just drinking it. They were injecting people who were refusing to drink it.
Yep.
So over 909 people actually died from. And when they wind up getting there, you can see these horrible pictures online. It's just they just walking in a compound. There's just dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah, it was over 900 people. They said until 9/11, it was the largest loss of American civilian life in history, in American history, was actually because of this cult, which is surreal. I mean, there's a bunch of documentaries.
Oh, that's the
There's
problem.
one on
Yeah,
Hulu, I think. Truth and Lies, Jonestown, Paradise Lost is a Hulu one. Most of the things we are actually talking about today, there are documentaries for. But People's Temple is
absolutely.
definitely a very popular one. I think just to get it out of the way too, because obviously, like this has to be here, is the Manson family, right? I mean,
Helter
again, I'm just kind of
Skelter.
getting this out of the way. I mean, he's synonymous with cult leader. Like when you said Charles Manson, it's synonymous with it, right? So he started his group, the Manson family, or sometimes just referred to as the family. Started his group in San Francisco in 1967. He eventually moved to LA later that year, and then he tried and failed to initially establish himself as a musician. Like that was Charles Manson's big thing. So he became obsessed with the Beatles song, right? Helter Skelter, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And he started using the term to describe a race war that he believed would usher in this apocalypse. And his idea of this race war was that blacks and whites were going to have this war, and ultimately the African Americans were going to succeed over the white people and win in this race war. But when they do that, they would lose so many people, and this is like the racist craziness of his thought as well. that they would not actually have anyone that would be capable of leading them. So they would need more white people to lead them. So he would, him and his followers would then come out from hiding after this race war was over. And then he would lead this new nation and this new world order of African American people. And then in August 1969, he sends a group of his followers to a house in Benedict Canyon, California, and he basically tells them to kill everyone inside. But I think the reason why he became such a big deal, I mean, obviously heinous crimes, but it's because of who he kills, right? I mean, he winds up killing a up and coming actress, Sharon Tate, who was pregnant, and the way that they kill his followers is they actually go in and like cut her stomach to make sure they also kill the baby, which is gruesome, to say the least. She was also married to Roman Polanski before his whole scandal thing, and he was a very known director at the time. And there was also a celebrity hairdresser that was killed. And actually, Jack Nicholson was supposed to be at that party. He just wasn't. Last minute change. So things would have been a little different, right, in the Hollywood world.
Yeah.
The next night, his followers wind up murdering Rosemary and Lino LaBianca in their home in Los Feliz. So like this kind of continues until they're caught. He told them that by doing these murders, by killing these people, they would kickstart this helter-skelter concept, right? Ultimately, some other people believe that because Sharon Tate's house was once owned by a music producer that refused to give him a record deal, they think that he still thought that was the thing. That's why he sent him in there. Right.
And those girls were brainwashed. Like that was part of their trial later on. They said, listen, there's been talk about releasing a couple of them. They've always refused bail. They said, listen, I was brainwashed. I was brainwashed by, I was manipulated. I was young. I was brainwashed by Manson. And they were like, well, you're still responsible for your actions.
Yep.
Because it was such a heinous crime, obviously. But
he died not that long ago in jail.
He died long ago. I think some of the women are still alive, but I know a couple of them did die in jail.
Well, yeah, they were much younger than him too. They were like upper teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
But yeah, he winds up going to jail. He dies in I think 2017. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say 2017. He's like in his 80s. Also, obviously, dozens of books, films, documentaries about this guy. It's like, like that's why when I say cult, you often think like Charles Manson. Like that's the one that pops up the most.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
So what are some other ones that we could kind of go to?
One that I saw that was really disturbing that I've heard of, not much about, was the Children of God cult.
Mm-hmm.
This one gets a little... they're all disturbing, but this one is particularly disturbing.
Yeah, I think it's funny. We should have probably started at the beginning. Like
a little disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. We're a little late with the disclaimer. But anyway, some of these are very graphic in nature. I mean, they talk about...
And we're not going to get into those details, but...
but they do talk about assault, sexual assault. They talk about, some of these deal with rape, some of them with obviously suicide and so on and so forth. So, again, for the younger listeners, we're only about 15 minutes late, but here is our disclaimer. Boom.
Yeah, especially this one. Like, obviously, the other ones are brutal that we talked about, but this one deals...
it gets intense.
It gets intense. So it was initially known as the Teens of Christ, and it was founded in 1968 by a preacher by the name of David Berg in Huntington Beach, California.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was doing, he was bringing in runaways, like hippies, people who didn't have like a home at the time, and he would preach a kind of worship that combined Jesus along with that the free life movement, right? Free love movement of the 60s. So he gave... they would kind of live together in these isolated communities where they were all pillars on the Children of God Church. So they were not all in one place. They were all over the place, actually.
Yeah, some actually, they say around the world even, right?
Yeah, around the world. There are over 15,000 people, which again, is like, right, you take the whole world, 15,000 people. These are 15,000 people dedicated to this David Berg guy, right? Whatever he wanted to do. And they didn't work or go to school or anything like that, all right? And the Children of God, they didn't believe in a nuclear family, like the father, the mother, or whatever it would be, like the parents and the children. So the children were all grouped together, and they lived separate from their parents. So after, the child was born, they would then, be taken away and raised in these like communal... They weren't raised with their parents directly. They usually knew who their parents were biologically, but they were not seen as like, these are just your kids. It's like everybody's kids.
Yeah.
And then in the late 70s is when they became notorious for Berg, who actually had his own daughters. They would they did something known as religious prostitution. They basically would go out and send women out and try to bring men into the cult by bribing them with money, drugs and sex and stuff like that. Being promoted and encouraged, eventually they do that also with children. And that was a big thing that was happening with them, is that they practiced pedophilia Wakan Phoenix, Rose McGowan, they both
Yeah.
grew up in these communities. They left many years before, but they talk about it, and I read some of the interviews and stuff. I think they're in the documentary and stuff. So that starts happening in the 70s. They start sexualizing children. In the 90s, it really starts to become more intense.
Yep,
So I'm
yep.
sure you saw that. There was this guy who went on a talk show in 93, and he revealed that he was ordered to rape a 10-year-old by Berg. And it's just like, it just gets really just crazy with things of that nature, and it gets really intense. Again, there's documentaries on that talk about this.
Well, because
And a
Berg
lot
died in 94, right?
and that's pretty much, yeah. And while he was under FBI investigation, but this was
Yeah.
happening obviously in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and the early 90s when it started coming out more in the public. People started hearing about this more. A lot of people left and started talking about it because a lot of these people started killing themselves, and some of these high-profile people were, coming out against this. What was going on here? Like Ricky Rodriguez, who was abused in his life by his father in the group, and then Berg dies in 91. The cult still exists today. It's no longer called the Children of God. Now it's called the Family International. And they said, listen, all that other stuff that died with Berg. We don't do that anymore. It's still more about just like,
Beliefs.
they don't believe in
Yeah.
nuclear family, but it's more just like, the peace, love, and happiness, and let's all be together. So I don't know, again, they say they don't do that sort of stuff anymore. Obviously, no one's going to come out and say that that's something that they're doing, but I'm sure they're being investigated and things like that. But that one was just like, if you watch like the YouTube, like just the trailers on this one,
Oh yeah.
it's disturbing because they
Yeah,
even
like
passed out like pamphlets in discussing his teachings and why it wasn't important, what he's doing was okay. It's just really
it's
just
intense. Like it's intense. Again, it
yeah.
like just researching this
Turns your
makes you
stomach,
really
yeah.
makes you like kind of depressed. So hopefully we're not making you guys depressed. But yeah, it is pretty depressing. Another one that kind of pops up a lot when you start looking this up is Heaven's Gate.
Yes, I was gonna say
Right,
that
so
one.
it's 1970s. Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, I think.
Yes. Mhm.
They came to believe that they were the two witnesses that were referenced in chapter 11th of the Book of Revelation. So they started preaching, right, and gaining followers, mostly in California and Oregon. And they started preaching these apocalyptic prophecies, how the world's going to end, but salvation would come. Except they believed that the salvation would actually come in the form of a spaceship. Like that was their whole thing. There was like a science fiction aspect to it. And the idea is that while the spaceship was going to come with salvation, their bodies would be kept in a cocoon state. So that way they could be transformed to heaven, as long as they're like specially prepared for this transformation from Earth through this spaceship into heaven. So the group was known as the Human Individual Metamorphosis. Later, it became Total Overcomers Anonymous, and then eventually became Heaven's Gate in the 1990s.
Yeah, because
The
before
group
that
actually,
they were living underground. And like Walter Cronkite actually reported on them
yep,
in like the
no, like
70s
this
and
is,
stuff like that. So
yep,
this was around for a long time. People just thought, all right, these people, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Pete, but
no,
they live
go,
they live underground, right? They were saying they had all these
yep,
like underground tunnels that they dug out. Fancy. They lived in there, and they are best well known for what happened in 1997, which is what we'll get to. But they were spacecraft
terrestrial, yep,
that was going to come and take them, and they weren't dying. They were going to the next level. That's what they
yep.
believed was going to happen.
Yeah, so they were like preparing for the journey almost, right?
Yeah.
Basically to perfect themselves for the salvation or this journey through the spacecraft. They encourage members, so Applewhite and Nettles, like they encourage members to kind of detach themselves from emotion, and some of
For
it
the
was
rest of their
like,
families, yeah.
disregard your family, stop having sex entirely, like almost become like not human, like take away all the things that made him human. They also like dressed in this like loose clothing and had shaved hair. It was actually a very exclusive or inclusive, whichever you want to look at it, group. It was only about 60 people, very much away from the public. In 1993 to 1995, this is where it becomes kind of a deal, right? Internet becomes kind of known in the early 90s. So the message of this group gained some popularity because of the fact that we now have the internet. So they set up a website to try to spread their message. And then apparently in 1997, the Hale-Bopp comet was approaching close to Earth, and there was a rumor that suggested that a UFO was following it. So they believed that was indeed the case. So the group took the rumor very seriously and became convinced that their salvation had finally come. So they prepped themselves in March of 1997, where all 39 remaining members were found in a mass suicide in preparation for their transition to heaven. But it was also interesting how they did it, right? So there was, I think it was 38 or 39 followers, but their
39 of
suicide
them,
was
yeah.
they took. Then they took
Applesauce.
it was applesauce, right? They put the
Applesauce, yeah, with a sedative with vodka, Their heads were covered in plastic bags. They're all dressed the same,
Yep, it
right?
was Nike
Black
shoes.
tunics,
Yep,
Nike shoes, black tunics, and like this. They were all covered with this, just like a tarp, like not tarp, but like a little blanket,
yep. It was
more
like
or less. So
purple.
they would all be covered with this, and yeah, and
Oh, and
right before,
all of them had
yeah,
$5.75 in their pockets.
yeah, and there was an upbeat video message made of them right before the suicide, saying, "Listen, we're all willing and happy. We're not dying. We're moving on. We're shedding our earthly bodies and transcending into this spacecraft that's right behind
The
right
comet.
behind the comet. And we're diving on the next level." I remember people seeing this, and then like I actually remember, we were alive during this time, little teenagers, I guess, right?
Yeah,
And I remember
preteens.
seeing it on preteens. I remember seeing this on Saturday Night Live, like them like joking about it. Like Will Ferrell actually was being Marshall Applewhite and saying, like, "Okay, look, we're on the spaceship," and he's like these little aliens around them. So like, "Hey guys, see, no, we're fine," like I said, and then you had like the guy from like Dan Rather talking to them and be like, "Oh yeah, what about the castration?" He was like, "Oh yeah, that was my bad. That was my mistake. We didn't need to do that." So they're kind of
Jeez.
making light of it.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about it later on. There was some backlash, rightfully from the families. But listen, my father, my aunt, my friend, whatever, he was part of this cult and he committed suicide. Now you're joking about it on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Because again, they wore like Nikes, like, well, all this stuff, but they're wearing Nikes and stuff like that. Like it was just one of those things. It was seeing the footage was very different, I guess you could say. Because again, it was pre-internet, but it was a little bit of internet going around. So it was flowing that you could get a lot of stories about it.
And again, they're still around today, by the way. Their website is still going. It still goes live.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah, they're still there.
Still a thing. Which one you want to hit up next? I mean, again, there's quite a few.
The most, well, I guess, kind of recently in the news, right? Nexum.
Nexum is the most recent, I would say.
I know you want to talk about that one a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's just this one is also in the news because of the people that it includes. It includes Hollywood actresses, and it's kind of it's an interesting one to say the least because you think that like this doesn't happen anymore, but it still does. So started by Keith. How do you pronounce his name?
Rainier,
right? Yeah. He started it in 1998. And it started as a self-help organization. So the idea was to have workshops and classes on like self-empowerment.
Empowerment.
Yep.
That's why you appeal to so many like young actors and actresses, because it was all about like getting,
empowerment. Self-help.
Like so you could achieve your dreams. A lot of like professionals and like people who worked on Wall Street, they computer engineers, Silicon Valley. They were at least. A lot of them joined it, but a lot of them too just at least went to a couple of his classes.
Yeah. Well, without even realizing at first what it was. Yeah.
What it was. A lot of them and some were like, "Oh, this is kind of sketchy," and left. But other ones get more sucked in, obviously.
Yeah. So more than 18,000 followers in North America alone until 2017. And, the idea was eventually what started happening is people started talking about it and it became a big deal. And it's still in use today. I mean, this is very recent. But essentially, women were recruited under the false pretense that they were joining the sisterhood of sorts, right? Yeah. And it actually wound up being a sex cult. So there was like a pyramid scheme that existed within this whole group with this Rainier guy. And there was members that were called the Vanguard, or like the top masters. And they would go out and try to recruit other women to these secretive groups. And then the newest recruits were referred to simply as slaves. And in order to be admitted to the secret club, you had to like give the master some compromising documents, whether they were photos or anything else like those matters.
So you could be blackmailed.
That would blackmail. Yeah, that you could be blackmailed.
They would be like, if you're going to speak out against this or expose anything in the group, we have these pictures that we're going to send out.
Which were willingly given, by the way, to join the group.
Again, they were like, well, I'm never going to, these people were like, well, I'm never going to leave this. So it makes sense. At this point, they were ready. They were in.
Nuts. They were also branded. Like each woman was actually branded with apparently his initials.
Like what they would do to cattle. If people are wondering, they would burn this onto you.
So in 2020, as this starts to come out in 2020, Rainier is tried in court. More than a dozen women come forward with statements that regarding psychological but also sexual abuse, and he's convicted of many crimes, including sex trafficking, racketeering, child pornography. Because some of the victims were as young as 15 years old. He is sentenced to life in prison. Again, this is all happening during like the COVID thing, so people don't really remember as much. But again, it just happened. And his lawyers actually said that he's not really sorry at all. He's not really sorry for his conduct or his choices. But again, there's some people there's some actresses. There's an actress from Smallville that was part of like his recruitment.
Yeah, she's probably the most famous one. There's come up with other members. If you watch the HBO documentary, I think it was called like The Vow, where they kind of talk about it and they show her on there, the actress who played Chloe Sullivan.
Yeah.
And then there's actually, I think a couple of the other actors and stuff were actually on it or went to a couple of classes. They're like, yeah, no, we're good. But they didn't actually join the whole thing.
Yeah.
And but he talked to. I remember afterwards watching. 'Cause I was a big Smallville fan, so that's why I
Yeah.
remember seeing. Oh man, that's Chloe.
Like, what is this?
Crazy. What happened? But then you watch like some of the other like Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, some of the people from Smallville, like talk about her. Like you would never have known it. Like she talked about next to him here and there, but not that much to them.
Yeah.
You know, it was more of I guess she knew like they weren't going to go for it, but I guess like it just.
Nuts.
It's just one of those things. And like they said, she was always very happy, upbeat. She talked about it, how much it helped her. And they were like, oh, good for you. Good for you. That's awesome. Because again, it was seen as one of these self-helps and anything else. And you hear about all these things that were happening. And like you said, Rainier, he's not sorry. He's like, what? I didn't do anything wrong. Everything that happened, these women did willingly.
Yep.
So they're just like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like,
Yeah,
they were brainwashed. It's, there's ways to have people think that they're doing it willingly when actually they're not,
All right, let's get to the next one then. What do you got for
Again, let's do another one that I remember somewhat. I mean, I was 11 when a lot of this stuff happened, but I remember talking about it in school and stuff like that. And that was the Branch Davidians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you saw this one.
Right? I saw this one. Yep.
This is actually what I remembered. I go, let's do this podcast. So I remember the Branch Davidians with David Koresh. And it was basically, this one is famous. And it actually spawned a lot of, this is what the siege in Waco, Texas is what spawned the Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombings. And a lot of these conspiracy theories were like, conspiracy theories use this as an example of the government, taking over your lives, basically. And David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, they had a compound in Waco, Texas, where Koresh said was, what he said was law. He basically said he was a Messiah, right? He was spoken to by God, and he assured his followers that God was willing to guide him. And he was also having relations with young women, all right?
Yep.
And even though he was reportedly telling people that celibacy was enforced among the men in the cult, and all earthly marriages were annulled, right? You can only marry other people, and all women in the cult belonged to him, and he would let.
They were his spiritual wives.
They were his spiritual wives. Again, he's still like a lot of the other ones saying how an apocalypse is coming and stuff like that, and he has to prepare for Armageddon. And they basically were founded decades before Koresh ever became leader. So he didn't start it; he just kind of like took it to the next level. And one thing that they were doing that got them in trouble, got the eye on them with the government, is they were selling guns. They would go to these gun shows. It was in Texas. And that's how they made a lot of money, was by selling guns. They had all these guns. And the FBI was like, we got this cult leader. He's definitely getting more fanatical. And now he's got a lot of guns. And that's what they basically wanted them to stop with the guns. And that's what everything came to a head in February of 1993, when the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco Arms, ATF, wanted a warrant to search the compound because of all these illegal weapons. And
it led to a 51-day standoff?
51-day standoff, when they're basically saying, and the videos like, we're not coming out. People would come out and they would be like, listen, we don't have no guns here and stuff like that. Just leave us alone. And the raid lasted for 51 days. And then there was some fire back and forth. But what basically happened is that the ATF eventually comes in. Janet Reno, you remember her from like the Clinton scandal and stuff like that. She orders tanks in. And they ordered using flash grenades, and the building gets caught on fire. A lot of wondering how that happened. They think it was throwing a flash grenade into a room that was freshly painted, not over some paint cans, and that spread the fire. Or other people say that the ATF set the fire on purpose. Others say the Branch Davidians set the fire on purpose, and engulfed the compound. And then 77 people died. Some of them were children.
And they found a Koresh right in there. He was actually shot himself in the head, right? They said that they found his body.
And it didn't end the Davidians. They still exist. They built a church right on that same spot, and they continue to worship there. Because remember, they were around even before him. I don't know if they're still selling weapons and stuff like that. That's how they make their money anymore. But it was very similar to the other things. Like, you're giving up. Once you're part of it, you have no outside connection to anyone else in your life. But that was one that you can still see on TV, everything that happened.
Then there's the Japanese one. What? How do you pronounce this one? Master Shin.
The master. That was the master, but it was Shinrikyo, I believe.
Shinrikyo. Yeah, Shinrikyo. Yeah. All right, so let's do Shinrikyo. It formed in 1987. It was a Japanese cult. They called him Master, right?
Yes.
Shinrikyo. Originally started a yoga school, but then he went to India, and then he met the Dalai Lama, and he achieved this enlightenment. And in the early 80s, and he came back and basically created this new school where he started teaching the combination of Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity. And he basically got a lot of followers, and by claiming to embody God, and he wound up securing, like most of these things, winds up securing a lot of wealthy financial donors.
Yeah, they would give
But
all their money to him.
yep. So then eventually what happens is this group becomes very radical. And whenever someone tried to defect from the group, they would be found dead. Like that was the issue. It's like people would just die.
Well, everyone who even spoke out against the group, right? There was a lawyer.
They would just die. And then so that's kind of how the police got involved in all this. They're like, what's all these deaths about? Then
At first, the police were just like,
go. Yeah.
they were just like, this guy's crazy, whatever. Like they kind of just thought him as like a joke, because they were talking about things like they wanted to make, we're going to make space lasers, we're going to have tanks, and we're going to make these like death rays and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, okay, fine. You know, like a lot of people,
Yep.
like people would leave the cult. Some people, and they would like tell the police like this, they're not going to make space lasers. Like we're not worried about it. That's not actually going to happen.
And what's interesting though, like in order for him to further get the police, like deflect the police attention away from his group's activities, he came up with this idea that he was going to orchestrate like an attack, like a terrorist attack on Tokyo subway, but then it won't be blamed on him. That was the idea. Like that was going to deflect the police attention, but actually
they'd be focused on that instead of him.
Yeah, exactly. And what it does though, however, is the complete opposite. The police figures out it's him that did this, orchestrated this attack. Well, didn't they get?
It was a crazy attack. Like 12 people died. It injured more than 50 people.
Yeah.
So it was sarin gas. And what they did was they filled these balloons basically up with this gas, and they put these balloons on a subway. And then the guy was going to walk by with a umbrella, and that was going to release puncture, and that's going to release all the gas. I think some people did it, some people didn't. Like it didn't happen as originally
as bad as, I mean, they killed 12 people, but over 5,000 were really sick.
Yeah, it was like sick, like sick. It isn't just, it burned their eyes a little bit. It was horrible. A lot of people were very injured from this. But yeah, it was just one of those, luckily it could have been much worse, but the people carrying it out, they didn't really practice it. It wasn't like well planned. It was like, this is what you're going to do,
Yep. No, the authorities find him very quickly and basically arrest the leadership and dismantle the group. So it kind of ceased to exist. But, it's one of those like more international ones that oftentimes we don't really talk about that much in the United States.
Yeah, but it's one of them. He thought he was going to like, everyone's going to die in a third world war started by the U.S. and then him and his followers would take over the world. That was basically what it was going to be.
There was also the Angel's Landing. That's a freaky one too. It's the name of a 20-acre compound outside of Wichita, Kansas. So Lou Castro and a small group of people lived in this like extravagant life in the early 2000s, and people were kind of getting a little like, wait, where's this guy coming with all this money from? Like his followers, and they have all this money on this 20-acre compound. But Castro's followers were convinced that he was an angel. He was over 1,000 years old, and that he was like a seer angel, and he could look into the future and know when people were going to die. And he kind of got people to join this thing, and it's like, I know when you're going to die, and blah blah blah. But ultimately, because his compound was so wealthy, law enforcement started like really taking an active interest in it, because they're like, okay, like where does this guy have all this money from? And then police really got involved when Patricia Hughes was a member of Angel's Landing community, and she tragically turns up dead on the compound in 2003. Then
and the husband dies. Yeah,
because
dies.
Their husband's like talking about it, like, something's fishy. And then boom, the husband dies in a freak accident 3 years later, right? And that's when you have detectives are like, all right, like we need to start looking into who's living on this Angel's Landing. And what basically they figured out is that whoever's part of this cult, what Castro did is he would have expensive life insurance policies that would be taken out on these people that were in his circle. And what he would do, him and his cult, they would cash in by the members when someone in the makeshift family like accidentally died, right? So if someone died, they would cash in. That's how they had all this money. And basically every 2 and 2.5 years, they would kill someone off and then collect the money and just live off of it. But what's interesting is they couldn't really catch this Castro guy. What I know is that he was eventually arrested by the FBI, aggravated identity theft, because that wasn't really him, fraudulent use of social security card number, and then that's what it was. They found out his name is Daniel Perez.
Daniel Perez, yes. And basically he had sex crimes against him with girls, 11 and 14. Yep. And then he fled Texas and did everything, accusing Perez of the abuse, pointing to the murder of Patricia Hughes. And he was eventually charged with 28 felonies and serving
80 years in prison.
80 years. Yes, it also just like some of the ones I guess we can talk about. Again, there's many, many other ones. Maybe we'll come back and hit up some other ones one day if people
are interested in more
I
of these.
I don't want to say like this, but I know it's interesting. I mean, there's so many TV shows out there just on like cults, right?
I feel like every single one of these that like we looked at has
they have their own podcast, many mini episode podcasts to them. Yeah, like I said, we're just here to kind of like start them off a little bit, like see which ones interest you, see which ones, Not to join. I'm not saying join them. I'm just saying which ones interest you as far as like sucked into these things, why they did what they did, why they believed what they believed. These are some of the stories about the ones that have been around for the past, I guess, 50 years or so.
Yep. Also, the term cult, just looking into this, sociologists don't really like to use the term cult anymore. It's almost like it's not PC as much anymore. And now a lot of them, officially, they're referred to as NRMs, which are new religious movements, because a lot of them have something to do with a form of spirituality or some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, I think because a lot of that goes with what we were talking about before, is that these hard one like Jonestown and Heaven, they're all known as cults. So people just hear a cult and they already have like this negative
predisposition, almost like murder, bad, die.
They go, you're all going to commit suicide, or you're going to try to take over the world, or something like that.
Yeah, so like the end, officially speaking, these cults, aka NRMs or new religious movements, they're characterized by strict demands on the lifestyle of the members, giving up possessions, professions, whatever. Charismatic, authoritarian leaders that they have some, people follow. They believe they have some special powers, and is usually some form of imminent apocalypse happening. Like those are the main things that if you're like, hey, am I part of a cult? Like, look into whether you have some of these 3 components, and you might get nervous for a second there. But yeah, so I guess this concludes our episode on infamous cults. So
there you go.
That's that. There you go. So if you guys ever need to contact us, please feel free to do so. You could find us at www.historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. We're always here to answer any questions or listen to any suggestions you guys may have. So again, thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic!
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.